Once you've set up your survey, then you're ready to start inserting questions and sections. So from the home page, from our dashboard, I'm going to go into the Design tab of my SO303 test survey. But just remember as well that you can flick between Design, Distribute and Analyze with these three tabs here, and you can still access it from the dashboard as well if you want. So by default, you'll see that we are set up with one page, which is titled Page 1, and a final page. So what we can do is we can use each of these tabs here to add either pages, which we will treat as sections, and these tabs here, which we can use to add items within each of these pages. So pages kind of function like sections, and maybe to make it easier, you could retitle it to Section 1, Section 2, or really you can call it whatever you want. But one thing we always want to do at the start is we want to add perhaps a page where we can give some basic information to our respondents. This is usually a title sheet or an introductory sheet. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some text, which is just going to be in the form of a note. And what we want to do on our note, I've got a sort of a pre-made one here that we can just paste in. Your one should look a lot more detailed than this. Is to just give an introduction to the survey, but also to give an introduction to your project. And this is the chance for you to communicate to your respondents that you have handled all of the common ethical issues that we would have covered in survey analysis, such as confidentiality, anonymity, data handling, storage, and final use. Final use here really refers to your intention about using the data. So ultimately, why are you collecting the data? And communicating to your respondents clearly that you're doing this for a final year project under the supervision of the sociology department. Name your supervisor as well if you wish, and also to give your own contact details, but these will automatically be given as part of the survey since you've used your own student account to launch the survey. Once we add this note, you'll see that it's included here. And now at this stage, what we can do is we can click into preview and we can start to see what it's going to look like to our respondents. So when the respondent first goes into the survey, this is what they're going to see. They're going to come across the title sheet, and then they'll have the option to click next. So afterwards, in later sections, when we add more questions, we can have a look and see what that looks like. So this is called title sheet. This is called section 1. And then we can click back and forth into preview whenever we want. We can click out of preview by going up here to the return tab. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some questions. So in section 1, you'll see here that we can either add further sections or pages by clicking the add page button. We're not going to do that. We're going to go up here into add item. And when I click add item, you'll see that it gives me a number of different options. We can have multiple choice single answer questions. That's where we have a multiple choice question where the respondent can only give one answer. This one multiple means they can click more than one answer. We'll see questions like this often used in the form of lists of, if we were measuring deprivation, let's say, they would give a list of multiple items and the respondent could click if they have something or they don't have something. A selection list question gives the respondent a drop-down list, like a drop-down menu with a down arrow, and they click one response from that response set. These two questions here are free text questions. So this is the short form and this is the long form. These are what we call open-ended questions. So the respondent can write an answer. They're not as easy from a quantitative analysis point of view because they don't translate readily into number. The analysis is performed on the text, and usually what I would encourage students to do for a survey, certainly for a third year project, is to minimize the use of these insofar as possible and to use them sparingly. Use them for follow-up, use them for clarification. And if you do want to collect more detailed data with an open-ended question, just make sure that you flag in the title sheet as well that there are a number of questions that require some more detailed or considered responses. The other options are date questions, where the respondent can indicate a date. This could be the date on which they did something, joined something, or it could be a question about date of birth. There's a time question as well that asks, as it sounds, time. And then a combination date and time question. The scale rank question is very useful. We'll be looking at that one as we will be looking at the grid question format as well. And then note and section, we've seen already. A note will allow you to add some text like this, and a section will add a new section in within this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a question here into section 1, and we're going to look at the forced choice multiple response question. Up here we're going to enter the question text, and we're going to do a very straightforward one just to start with for demonstration, and we'll ask, what is your highest level of education? Now down here we can add answer options. We can do this in list form, and this section, this is going to be useful later when we look at how we can copy and paste response options that are commonly used or frequently used, like Likert scales, strongly agree, agree, neither, and those types of ones. But for this one here, we're going to just give three possible responses. And obviously in real life you wouldn't phrase a question like this. But we're going to start with looking primary education is going to be our first option. Then we're going to add another one, which is secondary education. And then our third one, which is going to be third level education. Now, if I wanted to, I could write these in list form without clicking through this. And this is useful because if I have questions with the same response set, I can just copy and paste them in, which I'll show you how to do in a moment. And then we click Add Question. Now we see that the question appears here in our section. And if I go to Preview and I click through from the title sheet to the next section, you'll see that what the respondents will now see is page 2, section 1, what is your highest level of education? And they get a radio button option where they can only click one answer. So they give their answer to this question, and then they move on. Now, to return to the survey, we click back here to return. We can also use this question format to set up attitudinal questions. So if we have multiple choice single answer format questions, we could give the respondent a question that asks them to rate their level of agreement with something. And for questions that have kind of a familiar or a very frequently recurring set of answer sets, we could start off by writing it in here like this. So strongly disagree, disagree. Like this. And then what I can do is I can keep that copied in my clipboard. So what I'm doing here is I'm just highlighting, clicking Control C, or I can manually copy like that. And then we add our question. Now if we go into preview, you'll see that we have the response set showing up here about agreement, where they can indicate their level of agreement. But chances are for an attitude survey, you'll want to write multiple questions of this sort. And this is where the paste function becomes useful, because if I want to write another multiple choice question that has the same set of responses, I can simply copy paste them in here. And then when I go to preview, you'll see that now I have the same format question, just like this. Now there's different ways to write attitudinal questions, which I'll show you in a moment. And the second most common type of question is probably going to be something like this one here, which is your multiple choice or multiple response set question. And this is almost identical to the one we've seen previously, but with the slight difference that respondents can indicate one or more answers if they want. They're not just forced into clicking one. Now, if we were looking at something like a deprivation index, we could ask, can you afford? We could give a list of items. So heating, coat, and then we'll say a car. We'll add the question. So now when we add this question, you see here now, again, just purely for demonstration, we would never ask a question like this. And we go up into preview. You can see that now, now that it has squares, they can indicate as many as they want or as few as they want, just by clicking through with the arrows. So those are probably the two most familiar, or the two most common types of question you'll have, which are the forced response, select one answer question, and the multiple response answer question. In the next one, I'll show you a different approach to setting up scale or rating questions and blocks of attitudinal questions.